Hi, and welcome to Over 50 and Frank, where we embrace aging unfiltered. I'm Shannon, but when I'm blunt and say it like it is, my friends call me Frank, and that's what this show is about. Candid conversations about style, wellness, and life over 50. And you are here for the first episode. Yay! This all came about because I felt there was a huge need for content for women over the age of 40. I feel like once you hit that over 40, you kind of get forgotten about, and especially over 50. I turned 50 this past year, and it's been kind of a rough year, and I'm here to talk about all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I kind of want to start with how we got here and where things are going to go. But thank you for being here, and let's get on with being frank. Every year, I take myself on an alone date. And the last 3 years, I have taken myself to Breitenbush Hot Springs, where there's hot springs and you're fed and no access to the internet. By day, I own a marketing agency, and I'm also a content creator on the side, which has been taking up more and more of my time, and I have lots of thoughts about things. So when I went on this last trip to Breitenbush, I decided that I was going to write down all the things that have been on my mind and start off with like what this over 50 and frank means to everybody. So here's my notebook. It's 3 pages, and I wrote it down, and I want to kind of like skim through it and talk about some of the things because I don't want to forget something. So there's something about Gen X and how we want to just stand up and do something. And that was me in 2022 when my period stopped. And I began to discover all these crazy things were happening. Hip pain, acid reflux, my scalp, like itching like crazy. And I just felt alone in this. And I have friends that are younger that are telling me things like, oh my gosh, my heart is racing. And this kind of all started, with that. I was 40 years old, so 10 years ago. I woke up one day and my heart was pounding and racing, and I had no idea what to do. So I went to the emergency room. And the emergency room told me, after running a variety of tests and having me go across town to a different place to get the tests done, that I just had anxiety and that my heart racing was just anxiety. And granted, I was going through kind of a weird time in my life. A job that I absolutely love was transitioning from one company owner to another, and that was stressful. And I just had turned 40. And they told me it was anxiety. And I was just like, no, it's not anxiety. It is not. It was things like this that started happening, interest in, I'm just going to say it, sex. Like that was just one that I just lost complete interest in it. It has nothing to do with my partner. I just was like, I just don't feel like my body can do this anymore. And, are these things supposed to be happening for us? I remember my doctor asked me, hey, Shannon, like, when did your mom's period stop? When did she start to experience menopause? My mom died when she was 47, and my grandma's not alive to ask. And I have one living relative, my mom's sister. And when I asked my mom's sister, she was kind of like, oh, I just stopped getting my period overnight. No symptoms, nothing. And I'm just like, really? Like, I was not that lucky. So at 40, here I am with my heart racing. I started to get hip pain. That was 2 years later, I started to develop this horrible hip pain, and it just came out of nowhere. Like, nobody knew why I was having it. They were just like, oh, you just need to stretch more. And I would exercise. I would start gaining weight. And it was just like everything started to just compound on one another. And, one doctor was like, you're nowhere near, menopause age. Another doctor ran a whole bunch of tests that I paid out of pocket for, and to tell me that all my hormones were off, and then I needed to do, progesterone and testosterone and all these things. And then my period just started being really weird. Like it would come every 2 weeks. It would come every 40 days. It would come every 3 months. It was just random. And lots of money spent on tests and things. They just laughed at me and kept saying that, well, you're too young for this. So I finally asked my mom's friend, like, do you know if my mom was going through menopause? And she was like, we think she was, but nobody in the 90s knew much about that. So I started gaining weight. A lot of women in their 40s start to gain weight. And I started doing things that used to work. I did fasting, I did shakes, I did keto, I did Whole30, I did paleo. Nothing was working. And so one day I was getting my nails done 3 years ago, and I noticed that the gal that does my nails, Joy, she had lost weight. And I was like, wait a minute, you have lost weight. And she's like, yeah, I started taking this shot. It's called semaglutide. And I was dumbfounded. What? There's a thing that you can take? And so I went to her doctor, and he was like, yeah, like you take this shot every week and it helps you lose weight. That was really all he told me. He didn't tell me the mechanics behind it. And then he told me like, it's going to be $600 a month. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't do that. So I started doing some research on TikTok in the summer of 2022. And I started doing some research, and I started to come across people that were actually taking the brand name drugs of these, because that was the compound he was trying to sell me on. And to kind of back up, he was selling me on semaglutide and testosterone pellets. And I just wasn't convinced like the compounded medication was going to work for me. So I went down this rabbit hole of TikTok and discovered that I could qualify for a $25 Mounjaro, which is tirzepatide, savings card, and I went for it. So in August of 2022, I started taking Mounjaro, and it was life-changing. And in the beginning, I didn't think that this was going to be something that was going to work for me. And I didn't take any before pictures. I wasn't sure this was going to work for me. So what I did was I started to document my journey on TikTok. I didn't take very many before pictures of this process because I just didn't believe it was actually going to work. And then by the end of the first month, I had lost 20 pounds, and I started to lose weight on this kind of miracle cheat code Mounjaro. So this was kind of the starting point of researching and what perimenopause actually means. So what I found out is this starts like in your late 30s. And guess what I was doing in my late 30s? Having babies. So I would go to the doctor, I would tell them my period was being weird, and they would do things like send me off for a uterine biopsy, take blood tests, and that just would all keep coming back saying, you're normal, you're normal, you're normal, except that one naturopath that made me run all those tests that really weren't helpful at all. It was just kind of like a waste of money. So that's when I started to think that this whole perimenopause, menopause thing is actually broken. And I started to see people like Dr. Mary Claire Haver talking about it, and celebrities talking about menopause. But really, like, nobody talks about it. And I was just like, if we just start talking about it now, the younger generations and our daughters are going to have a much easier time than we had. And that's what I mean about Gen X standing up and taking a stand. Because as part of the Gen X ethos, we want to make things better for ourselves and for those who are younger than us. So all this to say, as a Gen Xer, I don't want to sit quiet. I don't want to sit quiet. You know, we came from this generation of people raising us who wanted us to be seen and not heard. And I find that I just want to be heard and I want to help people. So I'm Shannon, I'm 50, and I'm not afraid to speak up and share. And that's why they call me Frank, because sometimes I come out a little unfiltered with love and intention, and I just want to help. So when it comes to aging unfiltered, what does that actually mean? That doesn't mean like I'm not going to get Botox or I'm not going to get fillers, because I don't want to say I'm never going to do something, because I might actually get it. I want to talk about the tough things, like the menopause gold rush, all the celebrities that are jumping on the menopause bandwagon and creating products. And they're doing it with intention, but is it the right intentions? I want to talk about GLP-1s versus naturally losing weight. There's a big debate out there. There's a big TikTok star, Nikayla Naguaria, who's in her mid-20s, and she's talking about all the time about how I'm doing this naturally. And I want to kind of get out there that it's okay to have the tools in your toolbox to lose weight. And maybe GLP-1 meds aren't for everybody, but they could be in some certain aspects. There's also HRT. Like, there's so much around HRT. Is it good? It's bad? You know, we'll talk about that. It's definitely worked for me. Exercise when you are older, and what are the recommendations are on that. You know, I've put my face into ChatGPT and it's told me what I needed to improve. Have you done that? Because it's insane. I also had kids later in life, and I got married a lot later than a lot of my friends. And I have a kiddo going into college next year, and that whole empty nester thing is so lonely and sad, but you got to detach. You know, I'm a content creator on the side, and I work with brands in and day out, and just sometimes there's the ageism with that. Like, you know that 300 billion women over 40 spend money on cosmetics, and the cosmetic companies are overlooking us. They're completely overlooking us. I see this happen in the fashion industry, where there's brands that cater to older women, but they're showing all younger women. And how embracing aging unfiltered, like, what does that actually mean? I'm not going to say like, don't get the plastic surgery and don't get the tummy tuck and don't get the Botox. But what are the things out there that you can do if you don't want to do that? And like the big thing, gray. You see this? I have gray hair. I have a lot of gray hair right here. And I haven't colored my hair, but my hair is just like not holding curl anymore, and that's because I'm not chemically stripping my hair anymore. So there's a fine line with that. Also, like with menopause and GLP-1 use, I have lost hair, which is it's just so frustrating. I've like doing all the things to keep the hair there, and the itchy scalp. Oh my gosh, it's itching right now. So as you're listening to this, and if you follow me, if you want to go to my Instagram at Hey Shannon Lee, or my TikTok at Hey Shannon Lee, or if you want to send me a message, I would love to know, like, what do you want to hear when it comes to aging? And as a younger person, if you're in your early 40s or your late 30s, like, what do you want to know about getting older? What kind of advice do you want? Because I just want this to be a resource that it's okay to age, and it's okay to take a stand and say, like, we're not going to put up with this. We're going to age gracefully, and that's okay. The other part of this is we'll talk about things that worked and didn't work for us. There's a lot of products that I have tried that worked, and there's a lot of products that I absolutely tried and did not work. And kind of talking about those skincare things, those product recommendations, procedures that worked. Right now I'm really loving microneedling with PDRN, and we could talk a lot about that and maybe have an expert on about that. I know just the person for that. But we want to talk about anything that has to do with aging. Getting dressed every day. iCapsule wardrobe, it's been my biggest issue. It was an issue when I started working for myself years ago, and now that I've lost 60 pounds, it was a big issue then because I had to overhaul everything. How do you get dressed? What are the keys to that? There's just a lot of things that we could cover. So if you have something that you specifically want to hear about, you can reach out on my socials at Hey Shannon Lee. Follow me and send me a DM. It's both on TikTok and Instagram. I'm an open book, and we also will be starting a community in those areas as well that you can follow along. You've been listening to Over 50 and Frank, where we embrace aging unfiltered. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show and share it with a friend. I'm Shannon, and I'll be back next week with more real talk on style, wellness, and life over 50.